Welcome to Stories of Brisco and Bradshaw. I would be Bradshaw. That would be your Chickasaw native, your Chickasaw Hall of Famer, Oklahoma's favorite son, Mr. Gerald Brisco. And what a treat today. We have, I think, the governor of Florida. Not exactly sure, but I'm pretty sure it's the governor of Florida. Maybe the president of the United States. If not, he will be. He is the commissioner, former mayor, also former OVW heavyweight champion, two-time TNA tag team champion, the blueprint at one time. Kane's brother, who they may actually run together on a ticket for the national. I'm making a spoiler here. 2028, it's the presidential ticket. Kane and Matt. He is Mr. Matt Morgan. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's an honor being here. It's really cool to see you guys again. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Matt, man, it's been a long time, man. I really appreciate you coming on. You know, my sister, I become my sister's hero because she lives in a town where you proudly served, what, 3 terms as mayor. Now you're commissioner of Longwood, Florida, man. And she just thinks you do a wonderful job over there. And I tell her, well, don't judge a book, you know, all the way. I can tell you stuff. So she asked me to find out the real Matt Morgan story today. We're going to find out a little bit about you. But thank you for all you do for our state over here. You were up all night as I was last night, you know, watching a day. I think that's how you pronounce it. For an Okie to say that name is pretty damn good, no matter how bad I butcher it. But we got a little on my side of the state. And by the way, our state is divided from my side and Matt's side. You know, we're on the good side and he's on the corrupt side over there. But anyway, we're up all night fighting a hurricane. I got some damage and I wasn't sure if I was going to get on because my internet went off this morning. We had one of those bands pass through, but we got it all fixed up. We're ready to roll now. We got the commission on here. So Matt, tell us a little bit about your upbringing. I mean, you're a college athlete, a Division I athlete, and it must have been a hell of a scholar too to achieve everything you achieved. So tell us a little bit about your sports upbringing and how you first cracked into professional wrestling. But start with your basketball playing first, and then your high school athletic abilities.
So, like any kid back in the 80s, every Saturday morning, me and my brother sat there glued to the television screen watching pro wrestling. Where we lived I grew up in Fairfield and Bridgeport, Connecticut, 20 minutes from back then Titan Towers or WWE headquarters. And so every day I drive past those headquarters going to my boys club in Southport, Boys and Girls Club of America, to go play basketball, baseball, football, all the sports that most kids, you know, play as youngins, right? And just this ridiculous dream started then that I want to do this. But again, you can't walk into a Boys and Girls Club and tell the director there and say, hey, show me how to swing a steel chair. Hey, show me how to put somebody in a sleeper hold. You can't do that, right? So I went through traditional sports, as people would say, basketball, baseball, football. I got a lot out of that. I was early part of my childhood. I grew up in special education all the way through about 7th grade before I finally was fully mainstreamed with 2 learning disabilities. And so sports was a huge outlet for me. Socially, I was able to start to get friends by being on teams with other kids. Whereas normally I was very shy and reserved and worried about my, you know, insecurities of my disabilities sticking out so much that people maybe not want to be my friend, right? So as a young kid, sports were huge for me, huge. And so I also learned at an early age from my family's, you know, financial situation, if I wanted to go to college, I needed some type of athletic scholarship, is what my dad drilled into my head since around 6th grade. So from that day on in 6th grade, I worked every single day on playing basketball, on jump hooks, on free throws, on 3-pointers, on everything, to be the best player I could be. Luckily, I advanced a lot very quickly. I grew like a bean. I grew really quick in high school.
What was your growth spurt there? What age were you at high school? What, about 16? And you started to shooting up?
Yeah. You're 100% right. So freshman year, I was like I was 6'3" in 8th grade. I remember that was the first year I was able to dunk a ball. That's my reason I remember that. But I was 6'5" as a freshman. But that next summer, I grew almost 5 inches. Wow. And was 6'9.5", 6'10" ish. as a incoming sophomore. But the problem with that is now I was even more uncoordinated than normal. And I had to wait for my skill set to catch up to me growing into these huge boats that you could call sneakers at the time. Yeah, I was size 19 shoe. So like it took a long time for me to get my skill set caught up with my height, but I was able to do it. Monmouth University, so a small Division I school in New Jersey, gave me a full athletic scholarship. We made the NCAA tournament my freshman year there. Very lucky and fortunate. It's first time in our school's history. But then I'd say after my sophomore year, my coach was going to be retiring, and he's the one that actively recruited me in high school. As you guys know, as college sports works, I saw two kids in the pipeline that they were actively recruiting coming in what would have been my upcoming junior year. And I was like, I worked too hard not to be a starter on this team. So my coach is leaving. They got these two new transfers coming in. I'm not sticking around for that. I want to start because I've earned it. So I transferred out to a small school in Hawaii called Chaminade University, where I ended up meeting my wife. It's where I graduated as well. They host the Maui Invitational basketball tournament every year. That's why I transferred there. Obviously, number one, duh, because it's Hawaii, right? And it's beautiful. The obvious. But primarily because of basketball, I knew I'd be seen by NBA scouts better by being on ESPN more often through that Maui Invitational. So I played number one Duke Blue Devils that year. It was the first time Duke ever started 5 freshmen with Elton Brand and like four other All-Americans. Syracuse, Arizona State, some really big Division I universities that I got to show my skill set against. And it was good enough to get me NBA tryouts. I even had an NFL tryout just based on my size, if I'm being honest. But I had the hook here in this story that I oftentimes leave out, and I got to stop forgetting to do this, is even though I was trying out for the Pacers and the Raptors, my heart at this point wasn't in it. I graduated college at this point, and I really just did it to I don't want to say shut my dad up, but just my dad put a lot of work into me becoming a better basketball player when I was younger. But it was more like his dream than it was mine. I wanted to be a pro wrestler. So at this point, I had been working at a bar. I was bouncing at a bar in the summer times in between my college seasons, right? So right before my senior season, I met this WWE Raw magazine writer, this guy named Marco Torelli. He walked into the bar one night and he's like, "You ever thought about being a wrestler?" And I was like, "Well, hasn't everybody?" "Yeah, of course. But how does one become one?" Because this wasn't back when they had schools that you could just go online and look up. It wasn't out in the open as much as it is today with training. So I didn't know where one goes. I was going to get set up to go to a school in Massachusetts, I believe. But anyways, this Marco guy says, "Why don't you come work out with me at WWF back then, WWF headquarters on Friday nights? Vince McMahon is usually in there. If he sees the size of you, who knows what'll happen, right?" So every week for 6 months straight, every Friday night, I went there at 6 p.m. after work. I even got a job at Enterprise Rent-A-Car at this particular point because it was 1 block away from WWE headquarters.
Right. Yeah.
And so, long story short, I every Friday night worked out in that gym until finally 6 months later, I was walking into the men's room in that gym, and he was walking out. And just same way I met my wife, ironically, he smacked right into my chest as I was walking in.
And your wife was walking out of the men's bathroom, and as you were walking,
I was waiting on that.
That was too easy.
Yeah, thank you.
Too easy. But Mr. McMahon basically told me that they were about to start this. I asked him point blank, "How does one get started? Do I try to go to this wrestling school I just learned about last week in Massachusetts, or is there something else?" He told me to get in touch with Jim Ross, who I did, and Kevin Kelly at the time, which I did. They told me to create some tape auditioning for this new reality show that was going to be coming out on MTV called Tough Enough. So I gave them my audition tape, and a long story short, they didn't put it in time. Kevin's one of them, so somewhere it got messed up along the way. But season 2, it got turned in for that apparently, and I got a call from the producers of MTV that I've made it to this round to go try out for Tough Enough season 2 in Las Vegas. And that's kind of the long story short of my how I ended up getting started. I did do Tough Enough. I tore my knee on the show. I was way overweight because this was right at the time I just had an NFL combine test as well, a tryout rather, for the Rams as well. So I was like 340 pounds. I was a moose, but it was way too heavy. I couldn't wrestle at that size, and that was a very big eye opener to me that I needed to get leaner and more athletic. And so, long story short, they still signed me to a contract after I had to do these exams on my knee, that my knee was okay after I tore it, and sent me down to Ohio Valley Wrestling, where I got trained by Jim Cornette, Danny Davis, and Rip Rogers.
Who all was in that camp? Was that camp with all the future superstars in it?
So, so Brock, Cena, Batista, Shelton, Randy Orton, Brock was already on the road when I started in OVW, but the rest of them, they were still there finishing up when I had started. So, yeah, that was a hell of a class though, boy.
Oh, wow. Wasn't it that Hall of Fame class? Easily.
All monsters too. Like people, like I look back at Batista back then, he was playing this character called Leviathan there in OVW. He was like twice the size as he ended up what America saw on SmackDown later as Batista. He was the biggest human being I think I've ever seen in my life, just muscularity wise.
You know what's funny about that is you look at classes like that and you think, and Jerry, you were on the inside at that time, behind the scenes, you had to think, boy, we got this figured out. Because you get all these guys all at one time and you don't realize this may be just the class of the century, and you probably are thinking, boy, we're really good at what we're doing.
You think that, but then you think back to all the injuries. I mean, one of those guys get hurt, then the class kind of folds. But man, there were so many guys, and you're proud of yourself for going out and finding all these guys and hoping them the best. But you could just see it didn't take a genius to figure out Randy Orton had what it took, and Dave Batista had to look, and we could teach him how to do the rest. And Brock Lesnar the same. Just the guys that were coming. John Cena had everything it took: the vocal skills, the TV skills, and all that stuff. So, man, what a class! And Matt being a part of that, I mean, that just enhances that class even more. The guys that came along in that class, and you guys set the bar so high. The guys come along after you guys were just, oh, well, they're good, but they're not the class of that, whatever year it was,
And John, you remember, John came down. John, I think you were coming off of an injury, and you're about to go back to television, if I remember correctly. And we were, I'm not saying this to blow smoke, but we were very lucky to have you, Billy Gunn, Ron, but especially really you and Billy Gunn come down there and spend time with us. You're my first match.
Wow. Is that right?
And called on the fly where I could have, crapped it, what.
So well, that's what when a guy tells you, you've been in this school teaching you all this stuff, and rehearsing all this stuff, all of a sudden you get an experienced guy like JBL come in. Hey, Matt, we're just going to call it by ear. The panic mode has got to set in on. I don't care how experienced you are, to have that superstar coming in from the WWE and getting in the ring with you. Hey, kid, just listen to me. We're going to all call it out there. But wow,
I didn't realize that was your first match. That's great.
It was my first actual match of somebody leading me and calling it all on the fly. We don't talk about nothing beforehand, because I was still new at that time when you had gotten down there. I'd only been there for a few months. 3 months. But yeah, man. And what was cool about it was my confidence went through the roof after that, though, because if I could get through that, I figured in a half plausible way for my level at that time, then, it just taught me the importance of listening.
Yeah. And that's the oldest school thing. When I broke in, just as like Mr. Brisco will tell you, when he broke in, guys would tell you, we'll see you out there. And a lot of that was helping the youngsters at the time. When I was a youngster, they were helping me learn how to feel the crowd, learn how to get out there and call the match on the fly in case something goes wrong. Nothing with, pre-planning a match, but you have to be able to adjust out there. And that's part of the learning process. And when you can just go out there, then you have the confidence that, you know what, I'm okay, because I've been out there before. Things have gone wrong. I'll figure out my way out of it.
Yep. 100%.
What was involved with the tryout with the Rams? I mean, how did they get, just because you were a big guy, they played basketball, they wanted to give you a chance?
My agent that had gotten me the tryouts for the Raptors and Pacers had gotten me a tryout for that. But even that, they wanted me to be like an O lineman, when in reality, like, of course I played football, right? But growing up, but again, it'd been years since I had played. You know what I mean? And I really, in a perfect world, should have been an in shape tight end or a defensive end or something along those lines. But because I'd been so big, they wanted me to get bigger and try out for O lineman at the time.
Yeah, go ahead, Jerry.
Chaminade, where you went, every year, we all watch that Maui tournament because Chaminade's going to upset somebody during that tournament. Did you guys pull off one of those big upsets while you were playing there?
Hell no, we got whacked.
You're the year that they did pull off the upset.
No Ralph Sampson upset here. Not this time. No.
Where'd you get your shoes back then? Because I had a size 15, back in the, when I was in high school, I couldn't find shoes anywhere. A 19 was impossible. Had to be. Where'd you get them?
So come on, Mr. Brisco, this is your cue to say clown store. Come on.
I passed on this. You guys are too big.
Honestly, my brother was also as a 19. So I'd get a lot of his hand-me-downs when I was younger. But once I hit college, you know how it is. Your basketball team has a contract, at least mine, our schools did, with Nike. So we get as many shoes as we needed as we would go through them. So every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, if I wanted, I'd get a new pair.
Wow.
So I had a whole bunch of them still from college.
Yeah.
This cat. Yeah.
Right. Connecticut boy ended up in Hawaii. That'd be quite a treat for you too, and the culture change from being in Connecticut and going over there, that loose way of life there. That had been an experience for you. And your family really supportive when you went over there?
They were the only part that sucked was they couldn't watch me play, except if it was on TV, if it was an ESPN game, right? But for the rest of the season, they wouldn't be able to watch me play, which sucked. That's one of the reasons I chose Monmouth, because most of my family, even though I was born in Connecticut, most of them live in New Jersey. So most of my family could go watch my Monmouth games. But now, no. So that part, they didn't like that part, obviously. But they did see the maturity that I was able to get. I'm not just saying that to sound like good here, but it was a culture shock going to Hawaii. I had to learn how to, instead of being this cocky, big jacked up white guy walking around who I thought, I got put in check very quick through the different cultures that are there. Micronesians, Samoans, Hawaiians, and my wife, who is Hawaiian, was the one to really be the one to put me in check, as far as you don't see this they're putting out there. They're walking around very cocky and condescending and arrogant, and I didn't know I was doing any of that. I just thought I was trying to be funny and sarcastic, but sarcastic was not something that they were picking up on over there on the island as much as I thought they would.
Yeah.
So
I was going to ask you about your wife. So she's Hawaiian too. So that had to really make you feel comfortable around the island people and everything. So you got indulged in that Hawaiian culture right away then through your wife, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. Crash course, but yes.
Crash course. Yeah.
It's funny because before people don't realize, before the internet, before so many things like ESPN Plus, you couldn't watch all the college stuff. I went to a Division II school, Abilene Christian, out in West Texas. Now Division I AA, essentially. I think it's called FCS or FBS 1, whatever it is. But I watch all their games off ESPN Plus because they every one of them is now shown somewhere, because ESPN Plus has hundreds of games. But before you have all that, people don't realize when you were in Hawaii, you might as well been on the moon, because the games you're playing, people just can't watch.
And plus the time zone different. What, you're 6 hours different or something like that over there, right? 6-7 hours different at least.
La, what's the time zone? 5-6 hours? I think 5.
5. Wow. So your parents, they're wanting to go to bed, and you're just warming up on the court there.
Yes, sir.
Jerry, remember when Crush lived in Kona? And he would fly back and forth each week.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, even Edge and Christian, living in where
the Bahamas.
Bahamas, they're an hour earlier. That time zone really screwed them up, because I remember I'd be leaving, I'd be going home to Tampa, where they'd have to get on another plane and head over to Nassau, Freeport, wherever they were going there. And yeah, living in those other time zones when you're on the East Coast, it really messes you up time wise and everything.
Yeah, it does.
So, while you're in Hawaii, did your love for wrestling still growing over there? You able to pick up a lot of wrestling while you were there? And then did you have any other guys that were enjoying the sport with you?
Yeah, a bunch of guys, all my teammates. See, you got to remember, this is when wrestling's at its hottest. This is the attitude. So, like, people don't understand, like, how, like, people talk about the boom of wrestling now, and it is. It's doing great. WWE is doing amazing, obviously. But not the pop culture portion of it, if you will, that it was back then in the Attitude Era. Because whether I was at Monmouth University or whether I was all the way out in Hawaii, I'm not joking. All the different athletes have been in the same dorm together. Our dance team, our cheerleaders, girls, guys of all different makes and models, all would pack together and go back and forth between the two channels of watching the Monday Night Wars with a keg. They make a party out of it. Like, it was that popular and it was that hot back in those late 90s there.
Yeah, I don't think anybody will ever see anything like that again.
No.
I just, it was two of the most popular channels on television, shows on television, and it was a zero-sum game. We're both trying to beat the other one and put the other one out of business. That's never going to happen, because you don't have a competitor to the NFL that's going to come up and be on the same Monday Night Football with them like you had, or you're not going to have a competitor to Saturday Night Live that comes up and runs head to head with them. I mean, you would think, okay, we'll run on different nights. We would put a show up and they would put a show up on the same night, or they would put a show up and we would put one up on the same night. And we would watch the monitor literally and change the show live depending on what they were doing to answer what they were doing.
That's so crazy. And I'm telling you, everybody, I'm not exaggerating, everybody watched this. It wasn't like, okay, so when I was in high school and I was rocking my Undertaker shirt, I'd get made fun of 1993, 92. But then now 97, I'd say 97-ish through 2000, like 99 rather, it was like the coolest thing and everybody was watching it. Now I was cool because I was a wrestling fan. Whereas it was really weird.
Yeah.
So when you went to Titan Towers to train, did you like get a little pumped up before you go in every time? Make sure you're wearing like a tight tank top just to make in case you ran into Vince.
I went to go work out there, obviously, but no, because I was coming right from Enterprise, so I was wearing like a shirt and tie without the jacket, like this. But yeah,
so you went right to the top there. That's amazing. A lot of people don't get that opportunity, to meet the big boss right off the bat there, and you did, and you got that relationship with him. That was cool. So there was always that memory there. So you get sent to OVW. Jim Cornette, a unique character to say the least. We love Jimmy on this show, and he's a good friend. That had to be an experience after you dealt with all these Division I college basketball coaches and all this stuff. All of a sudden, you're with the king of hillbillies, Jim Cornette,
and Rip Rogers.
And Rip Rogers. The Rip was there too, right? And Danny Davis. I mean, let's don't forget Danny. He's a character too.
So, and John, you can speak on this too. So, like, there was nothing different. I wasn't like flabbergasted by the way Jim Cornette would, if he got passionate about something or dug in my butt because I did something wrong, let's say, I never was like, oh my God, why is he yelling or acted like that. It was just, I had coaches that were 10 times worse than that.
Oh yeah.
You've been coached like that all your life.
And it's normal because that's the way I'm going to remember not to do that again and correct something. And he's another one. Jimmy gave me a ton of confidence in myself for the ability to speak because, we all don't like the way our voices sound. At least I know I don't. And he made me a little bit more confident on the ability. He's to the point where he started giving me just bullet points during my promos in OVW. And here's the gist of what you got to match. Kane was coming in to wrestle me at the time. And he's like, here's the gist of what I need you to say. Say it in your own words. And from there, it just builded my confidence and the ability to start doing that,
Rip Rogers was on our show, and he told us, I'll try to watch my language. And when he said that, he dropped the F-bomb twice during that one. When he's telling us he's going to watch his language, he drops the F-bomb twice. And he's not even trying to. He's trying to watch his language, and he can't talk.
Can you imagine trying to explain to somebody that has no clue about wrestling at all, has no idea who Rip is? If you ever try to explain them who Rip was, like how long that would take and what their perception of it would be. He's a great trainer. We're lucky he's another one. Very fortunate to have him train me.
Yeah, that was a great system down there. I loved when I came down there. I was healing, fixing a torn bicep that was trying to get back to the ring during that time. And I really enjoyed it. I mean, it was really fun to watch Danny and Cornette and Rip and those guys train guys, because I just thought they did it the right way. Now I haven't seen a lot of other training, so I don't know what anybody else is doing. I just thought it was the right way what they were doing. And it was three really knowledgeable guys that really cared about the business and about the guys they were training.
Right. It was. And then again, to have the ability to go into at any given time to take Jimmy into the tape room and say, okay, can you watch my promo with me? Where can this get better? Right. Or when you were there, you sat in the tape room with me once too, John. Same thing, to be able to get to pick the brain of somebody who has 10 times more experience than me's opinion and how to get better, just like you would in any sport.
Yeah, and Cornette's the one guy that goes on a rant. When I go on a rant, it's just incoherent. When Cornette goes on a rant, you listen to it, goes, do you think that's really good?
It's like he reads a thesaurus before he goes on them, though. Like, it's super educated all the time, and he uses the big words as he's doing it, and it's all off the cuff.
Yeah, and he gets to a point with it, and you're going like, wow, that's really interesting. He's actually cursing at me, but it's really interesting.
Yeah. Yes.
I don't see how anybody could get mad at JC, and a lot of people do get mad at him, just his tone and his attitude. But he's a perpetual teacher, 24/7, and that's what I always liked about Jim.
And he loves the business, but more than almost anybody I know, and treat it as such.
So, and he still has that passion too, by the way.
Yep. Yes, sir.
Did you do any type of training for the ring before Tough Enough? Did you go to anywhere and try to take some bumps or anything? Or are you just trained in the gym?
Yes, I did. I went to, when I was out in Hawaii and I was still in college. Oh God, there was a place called Pro Wrestling Hawaii is what it was called. And they were actually going to call me this. I had no training. Keep that in mind. And this guy, his name was Bone Crusher. And I was supposed to meet him. Talk about being a sucker here. I was supposed to meet him on Waikiki Beach, which I should have known was stupid. And wanted to train me on how to lock up and just do the basics, and then come out to the show that evening and watch a little bit of it. Right. So I went to Waikiki Beach. I met him. He didn't show me nothing. I gave him my money. I went to the show that night to watch the show. Well, on the show, he comes to me at intermission and says, "Hey, do you have your any workout pants with you?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Can you put them on?" I said, "Sure." He goes, "Can you be in our battle royal?" I go, "I don't know what I'm doing." No. Want me to, I will, but I don't know what I'm doing. So long story short, I end up in this battle royal, and they call me Goliath. That was I'm coming out to this music. I have no idea that I'm coming out to. And I hear the announcer call me Goliath as I'm stepping into the ring. So at this point, I'm just duplicating every single thing I've ever seen, Kane do, Undertaker do, Kevin Nash do, every big essentially do, and try to mimic it to the best of my ability in this battle royal until the guys would tell me to throw him out, obviously. And then that I didn't do correctly. So
who knows on the first one, but
wait, Jerry, and so you didn't know how to throw a punch, you didn't know how to throw a kick, you didn't know how to lock up, you didn't know how to do anything, and they put you in a battle royal?
On my life, I swear to God, yes.
Wow.
I think it was the Navy, it was the Air Force base in Hawaii was where this was at. And again, it's called Goliath. That was a character.
What did you talk about? Did you talk to the guys afterwards? Did you what went on afterwards when you did it?
So basically, a lot of these guys were duplicating other characters. So we had a guy, like a very nice guy, serves in our military as we speak. Good dude. His name is Dave Payne, but his character was called like ice cold Dave Payne, and it was basically a Stone Cold knockoff. Well, so like these weren't guys that had like tons and tons of experience to be able to say, "Come here, young, and this is what you're doing wrong, and this is what you should be doing." It was just like, "Hey, that was great out there. You did great." And versus somebody saying, "What the hell is this guy doing in a bad? Why is this guy even in a wrestling ring? He's not even trained yet." Nobody was there to say that. No, John. No.
What was there any follow up with it? Like, hey, you want to come back?
Yeah.
Or?
So I got ripped off. This is the part where I get ripped off to go back to Waikiki Beach, where he swore he's going to have pads out there and we're going to learn how to lock up and wrestle. What he said was chain wrestling, which I didn't even know what that was then, obviously. I go there, nobody's there. I called his phone's turned off. A week later, I drove out to his place when I was able to get a ride out that way to the other side of the island where he supposedly lived. No one's in his home. So supposedly he did this to a bunch of us.
Wow. Yeah, there were a lot of scam artists, especially back then. Yeah. They'd take guys. I used to sit all the time at Sportatorium. Man. They would take guys' money, not train them, and find a way to get them out of there. You know, it was the old thing where they were training you to be tough. They weren't training to be tough. They were training to run them off and take their money.
Right.
What they're doing.
Yeah.
So they're in Tough Enough. One thing that I always thought was a little bit funny about Tough Enough, I guess that's the right word, or ironic, is you get all this TV exposure, which is millions and millions of dollars of TV exposure. And then all of a sudden you've got to get into the ring on a global stage. That's not really the way you want to do it. You know, you want guys to train off television. You want guys to train, in smaller places. So when they get the television, you don't see people make mistakes, which is one of the reasons that I'm such a fan of The Miz, because he was a reality star that went straight into WWE. That's impossible. You're seeing Logan Paul do it now, which is also impossible, but it's just hard. I don't know how you guys did it, because by the time I got to WWE, I'd had a couple thousand matches. I'd wrestled all over the world. I had this base of knowledge, which you guys didn't have, and that's such a disadvantage. I don't know if I could have done that.
You're athletic as hell, so you watched it your whole life, just like I did. So you would have picked up. You would have picked it all up. But the point though is, the only thing I didn't like about it in general, the concept, even though it's the way I got my start, and I can't knock it, right? It'd be hypocritical of me, but at the same time, once I got in the business long enough, and I look back on it now, I look at it, and I'm like, when people see you as being presented on WWE television, they should look at you as a star, right? So to come on out and introduce, let's say, a Maven or Nydia or Jackie, Linda Miles, myself, whomever, if they introduce under the Tough Enough moniker, you shouldn't be showing talents that are still, quote unquote, showing their ass still in inexperience. Right. Do you know what I mean?
That's exactly what you mean.
Yeah. It hurts. First of all, it hurts the company. It hurts all pro wrestling as a whole, in my opinion, because if it makes it look as like anybody can do it, then what are we doing here? That's the only part about it I didn't like.
Yeah, and it hurts the talent for a long period of time too. That's something that they don't get over with real quick.
Yes.
The old way to get somebody in the WWE is you bring them in and you show all these vignettes on them and you make all this stuff. And by the time they walk into the ring, people know them and they're a star. You're right. And then this way you bring them in. So, okay, they don't know anything. They're going to try to learn the business. A lot of these guys are going to get cut. Some guys might make it. It's just a different dynamic. It's a real negative for that person that comes through that Tough Enough system.
And so I kind of always thought they saw them as a reality star and not necessarily a WWE superstar until so Maven eventually he got there, right? He was involved in some big roles in which he was elevated, and he didn't show his ass as much, so to speak. You know what I mean? He didn't show any errors and things like that after a certain point. But with others and stuff, not can't say the same.
So what was the first moment you started getting the call up from OVW to go up to WWE?
WWE now at the time, just switched magazine, did this article on like the next line of new athletes at the time. And this is like when America started becoming obsessed with LeBron James, even though he was still in high school, on the front cover of Sports Illustrated. Freddie Adu, this teenage soccer star that was supposed to be the next Pele. They started WWE Magazine did an article on that, and then they took my picture from OVW and did this really nice write-up on me of the blueprint and all this, the blueprint character that I was playing in OVW and all this other stuff as the next quote unquote big thing, if you will. And it was right around maybe about a month after that article had went out on stands, maybe 2 months at most. I think one of the writers just had called me. Dr. Tom had called me, and they're like, "Look, you're definitely not ready, but we have they have an idea for you right now. Obviously, you know, what am I supposed to say? No, I'm not ready. I need another year down. I mean, I wish I could, but no, this was something I've been wanting to do forever. And here's the call coming rather. So long story short, got called up. They told me that it'd be me and Nathan Jones teaming together. And all I was told. And then when I got to television, that's when we were told what we'd be doing for that upcoming Survivor Series and being a part of Team Lesnar that year. I think it's 2003 Survivor Series.
Not a bad team to be a part of, Lesnar and Nathan Jones.
Yeah, really. Did Cornette give you the name Blueprint?
No, I did it in a promo. I did it in a promo while I was in OVW, where they started calling it, the stupid thing was starting to stick, and I think it was a good idea because I didn't want to copy Brock's gimmick, but they were saying the next big thing, right? And I was like, I'm not the next big anything. I'm the first walking, talking, running, jumping, athletic, intelligent, thinking man's giant the sports ever had. And I said, I cursed. I said, shoot, if Christ himself, if Christ himself can make a perfect giant, you're looking at it. In fact, you're looking at the blueprint of the perfect giant. Super cocky, super over the top. I got booed for it. That was the intent. And that's where that came from.
Wow.
That's awesome. I've always thought names that create organically are always the best because it fits. You know, it's just something sometimes that sticks with you. That's so much better than, you know, trying to have a think tank come together for a name. You end up with Ice Dagger, which is one of the names Stone Cold always laughed about that they came up with him for.
Man, can you imagine?
He brought the list to us when they came up with all these names. He would read them out to us in the locker room every single day. He goes, I could be Ice Dagger.
Whole business could have a different outlook if that happened. Who knows?
No kidding. So after you finish for OVW, you get the call up and they bring you in. And what was the first matches that you started having, a series of matches that you were having on WWE, the main roster?
It was so upcoming. We my very first time on TV was me and Nathan Jones coming out to the ring. Paul Heyman was bringing us out to the ring. First time ever on television, introduced us to the world, if you will. And then had Brock Lesnar come out to the ring, had Big Show come out to the ring. And eventually we announced these are the 4 members of Team Lesnar for that upcoming Survivor Series. So we had a bunch of inner matches between our team for Survivor Series and Kurt Angle's team for Survivor Series, which included JBL, John, and Ron as well. And I think Cena, oh my God, that's when Cena turned babyface. So John Cena turned babyface in that angle for the first time, ironically. Yeah. And yeah, you guys have a good team.
What a loaded group to be in for your first big storyline. That's huge.
Nerve-wracking, but at the same time, how do you not learn? Come on. I was learning at 100 miles an hour. Yeah.
Nathan Jones was such an interesting guy. I liked Nathan. You know, I always talked to him. I enjoyed him. He was a very intelligent guy, and you know, didn't say much, but but he was so freaking big. You just look at him and go, oh my God, this guy he's a monster. He would hit me so hard across the back, and he was safe. Now, don't get me wrong, I was not dangerous. I would have I thought he hit me so hard across the back, he broke my ankles. He's crumpling me like a beer can. And I told him one time, I said, Nathan, listen, just trust me. And I said, I promise you, I'm going to make you look as good as possible. I said, just listen to me. And he did. He never had an issue. I enjoyed working with him. I enjoyed talking to him. Were you there when he quit in Perth?
Yes, unfortunately. Yeah, it sucked. It was right before our match, if you remember.
I do remember. Yeah. I saw him walk out, and Dean Malenko was there, and Dean said, "What happened?" I said, "He just quit."
Just like that. And I was in my gear and we were up. Our match, I swear to God, it was like next, or it was like or the next match after this had happened. So I chased him in the park. I'm like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, I'm done. I'm done. I made my mind up. I waited till I got here. We're done. I'm done with the company." And he wasn't upset or anything at all. He really wasn't. It looked like something he just made his mind up on and knew he was going to do when we were there. That's my opinion, because that's how his body language was. That's what everything he was saying.
You had no clue leading up to this that he was going to walk. Wow.
No, we had. I mean, I guess I know.
And you guys had just flown in. You'd sat there with him, BS with him the whole trip probably, and he had no clue that he was walking.
None. I swear to God. And you know how it is when you're a tag team.
Right.
You're
you know everything. Yeah.
Well, that was not exactly an easy trip we were on going down there.
No, it wasn't.
Oh my God.
You remember we almost had the plane crash in Russia, and what scared everybody, Jerry, was Ric Flair goes, "This is the worst plane ride I've ever been on." And we all looked at him and, oh my God.
You've been down on two of them. This is the worst.
You've been on one where somebody died. What in the world are you talking about?
Everybody's face went pale white. We're all trying to act like it wasn't a big deal. Everybody was no big deal. When he said that, you're 100% right. Yep.
Yeah. We had to land in Russia. Remember, the snow was blowing in. The guys come on with the automatic weapons, and like, this is not a good trip. Then we went to Seoul. We went to like Singapore somewhere. Then we flew all the way to Perth. So we're flying 6-7 hours every night. I mean, it was a terrible trip. And then when we get down there, Nathan just grabs his bag and walks out. That's the last we saw of him.
What do you think it was, John? You think it was just exhaustion and frustration with the business?
On the plane. Yeah, Jerry, I was sitting near him on the plane to Perth, and he quit talking. He'd always ask me, different stuff about things. He was asking me he literally asked me about monetary policy in Australia, which I'm like,
wow.
Yeah. He was a deep thinker. He was a smart guy. And so we're sitting there talking about it. Well, then I was sitting by him, and all of a sudden he just quit. He quit talking, started rocking back and forth a little bit on the plane ride. But it was a tough trip. It wasn't like something he's about to snap or something. Never thought that. But in hindsight, you realize that he was having some issues as far as you could tell he was thinking about something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And down there, he just got his bag and literally walked out.
And Mr. Brisco, we were there at the show for a while. Like it wasn't once we got to the arena, he just said, "I'm out of here," and left. Like, we've been in the locker room, we've eaten, we went over our match even, and then this happened.
And that was his hometown too, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, there was he was probably going over, wasn't he?
I believe we were in a 6-man that night, and I believe we were not, because it was versus I think it was like Eddie. I forget who it was, but it was an upper echelon trio that was against us.
Sure. And we never saw him again. I mean, that was it. He just literally walked out of the company. And Jerry, what happened on the management side? Did you guys try to reach out to him to figure out?
Yeah, JR was going crazy. I remember at TV, what he asked me, called me, "Did you know anything about Nathan?" Because I was like you, John. I conversed with the guy a lot. I thought I had a sort of a semi-friendship with the guy, as well as you could with Nathan, and we talked back and forth, about the issues. Because I loved Australia so much. I'd spent a year down there when I was just starting, so I traveled throughout Australia extensively. And I always was asking Nathan about certain things when I was there, but I had no clue there were issues with him. But yeah, nobody wanted to lose Nathan, because what a character he was. What a draw he would have been if he'd stuck around.
His backstory was awesome.
Yeah, it sure was.
Yeah, something you'd make up that you wouldn't believe, but he actually lived it. I mean, it was pretty amazing.
So Nathan, Matt, here you are. You're coming out of OVW, and all of a sudden you're in a ring with Kurt Angle, Olympic gold medal winner. You thought flashback as a young boy, watching all the WWE, WWF at the time, and all of a sudden here I am with one of the top guys in the entire world. That had to be an absolute thrill to you.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. But then, as you know, as both know, you got to get over that really quickly, and otherwise, you're just going to be. You want to be a mark or fan, or you want to be a star. You got to get over that quickly.
And you've been the athlete that you were. I remember, coming in, an impressive young man, a very, very articulate young man, and everybody, you had a lot of respect, and you didn't want to get in the ring and be the mark boy and kind of let everybody down. You had to really step it up. So that's a lot of added pressure on internally on yourself when you go up against guys like that.
Yeah, but also like it was still at a time in a day and age where the heel, especially experienced like Kurt or John or whomever I was in the ring with, would be able to honestly get us out of anything or any situations that may went awry, or if I forgot something, let's say, or anything like that. And because of that, it would just make me more and more confident until, years later, I would then be that heel and be able to do the same thing for another younger talent. Right. Years later.
Yeah, you're in the ring also. You're in a group with one of the greatest talkers in the business and one of the greatest minds in the business, being Paul Heyman. Did you and Paul get along? Did you get a lot of feedback from Paul?
Yeah, yes. He's the one that because sometimes people would say, you talk too fast in your promos, or you don't sound the way you look. And to be fair, they're not wrong. But at the same time, that's how I talk. So what I mean by that, Paul would say, look, there's nothing wrong with you being an educated giant. We've never had that. And so things like that. And I remember Vince would tell me and sit me down sometimes. He'd sit there and say, like, guys that look like you don't say the words you use in your vernacular. I'm like, I didn't say this, of course. I'm just like, yes, Mr. McMahon. Yes, Mr. McMahon. But because I'm a rookie. But in my head, I'm like, what do you want me to do? Like, this is how I talk. Like, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to dummy myself down on purpose and walk around, fee, fi, fo, fum, I'm big, fat, slow, and that's played out. That's been done.
Big Show, you had Big Show for that.
I've got to send him that just so that he's in on that. The best thing about Big Show is when you say something about him is the way he sells it. He's just the best.
Well, so like John, I mean, both you guys watch sports. So at this time, I remember thinking, like, why can't wrestling, as far as the big man goes, the giant goes, so to speak, be caught up to speed with where NBA was? With you had Kevin Garnett bringing the ball up the floor at 7 feet tall. Dirk Nowitzki shooting the ball damn near from half court instead of being down low as the center should be at his height. Or Randy Johnson pitching 100 miles an hour as a 6'11", 6'10" pitcher. You have all these advances in the big men, if you will, these other sports, but I still felt like wrestling was still lagging behind on that, and you were still stuck having to do tackle spots the whole damn match versus, no sell tackle spots versus showing a little bit of that athleticism. I'm not saying show everything, but do the things like Undertaker was doing to separate himself, where you could see some of those glimpses of, holy shoot, this guy's super athletic. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Matt, you're exactly right. And I could take you back, 50 years ago, almost 60 years ago, when my brother and I first started professional. We were looked on as different. I mean, back there wasn't that many college. Well, they're college boy, he knows everything. And you try to kind of dumb yourself down. For me, it wasn't real hard, but you kind of lay back, don't show everything that you can do. You wrestled for 15 years in amateur. Don't show us all that stuff, kind of withdraw. That's hard to do for an athlete, especially an educated athlete, to come in and kind of slow down and back off of what you do well, because that's your bread and butter, really, is being an athlete in the ring. And when you're asked to kind of pull back from it, you kind of, well, what the hell is going on? Why can't we be like another sport there? So your philosophy and your thinking was right on point there too.
Yeah, and Jerry, you look at teams, you look at amateur wrestlers, they always would come in and they would be boring guys. You call them technical guys, and they do chain wrestling, which is not amateur wrestling. They'd say, oh, they're a technical wrestler. Then all of a sudden the Steiners come in and you go, holy cow, these guys are different level. And they would do crazy athletic amateur wrestling stuff into suplexes and all kinds of stuff. But it really took that amateur, from the background of he's the boring technical wrestler, the good looking, babyface, into that where Kurt Angle and Brock could come in and become that different athlete. That's the amateur wrestler with the kind of the MMA type background.
Exactly.
But transition is kind of hard to do. You know, Matt, you're stuck in the old phase big man guy, you know, where you just kind of did a certain thing and you fit a certain role. And that role is great if that's what that person is. But if that person is deeper than that, you got to figure out something to do with them, which they did with Undertaker. But others that came in, they just kind of put them in a certain cubicle and said, okay, this is what you are.
Yeah. Yes, you're exactly right.
And that's tough to do. And then, so what was the transition for because I know Vince liked Bubba Dudley's stuttering gimmick. I mean, he really liked it. And Bubba did it really well. I mean, he really did. Just Bubba's a talented guy, but it's always funny because the smart guys play the dumb ones. You know, that's typical wrestling, you know, because it's hard to be that dumb guy on television that gets over. And usually it's a smart guy playing that one. What came up with the stuttering gimmick?
So after Nathan quit, I was sent back down to Louisville for more training, which made sense. I needed it and wanted it. Now I had a chance to work as a heel this time. My entire time in OVW, I'd been a babyface that whole time on their television before being called up to be a heel on WWE television. So it was great to go back down, be a heel, be able to call matches and help call matches and get that experience that I needed. But when I went back down, they put me in a mask to improve my body language, supposedly. And then we got a call from Stephanie McMahon, who had mentioned about a potential, story that they're pitching at the moment is me being brought to television back as Abel, Kane's brother, which by proxy, nobody said this. I'm like, wait, does that mean I'll be Undertaker's brother then? This would be amazing, obviously. Because until then, I hated the mask. But when I heard that, I was like, oh, this mask is the best thing ever. Hell yeah. That kind of thing. But that didn't last, but maybe like a couple days, I think, because I got brought to television that same week. And they were on TV in Chicago. And we had to drive from OVW to there. And I went to Vince's office. And on my way to the office, Johnny Ace pulled me aside. He's like, hey, before you go in there, he's going to pitch you something that you're going to think is crazy. And he goes, my advice is, unless you want to go back down to Louisville and spend more time down there, he goes, I suggest you take it, but again, do what you want to do. So I went in the office, met with Mr. McMahon, and the way he pitched this to me was hilarious. Yeah. He goes, you darkened your hair. And I'm like, yeah, yes, sir. He goes, all right, I like it. And then he goes, well, I got an idea. Now you don't have to take this. He goes, this is just something I've been dying to put on the proper guy that had the proper size, that looked a certain way and acted a certain way and talked a certain way. I'm like, okay, well, what is it? He goes, well, Matt, did you ever go inside? You ever go to a bar and you ever see this really beautiful woman? And I'm like, sure. He's like, no. I mean, really beautiful woman. I mean, just absolute knockout. Everybody's staring at her, right? And you walk over, you introduce yourself, or maybe you buy her a drink, whatever. And then she talks like this when she says her first words to you. And he really brings his bass voice down really low. And I'm like, no, I can honestly say no, sir. Never happened before in my life ever. And he's like, well, you're missing the point. The point is that you need to have this heel. You need to have this Achilles heel. And I'm like, okay, sure, I get that. So what are we getting at here? He's like, well, he goes, somebody like you, so smart and all this other stuff. He goes, you need this to have a guy that's super defensive over his speech impediment. And I go, you mean stutter? He's like, yes. So, okay, what would the context of it be? Is it going to be comedy? Am I trying to make people laugh with this? Or am I being dead serious? And he's like, we'll have to work on that and see how it flushes out. I want you to go back to OVW. I want you to work on this. I want to watch tape of it and then be able to see when you're ready and bring it back up. And I said, with all due respect, I've been down there now for, I think, another 8 months after being initially called up the first time. So, I'm going to make this work to the best of my ability, but I want to start now. If we're going to do this, let's do it now. I don't need to wait. And if you don't believe me, I'll come back to you at the end of the night and I'll put it right to work in front of you in this office after the show tonight, if that's okay. And he's like, I like the confidence. Okay. So here I am, SmackDown or Raw. I forget which of the two shows it was. We're going on. I should be watching it, obviously, and learning, but no, I'm in the men's bathroom watching my facial expressions and going over built-in promos that I could cut on the cuff if he tries to bring somebody in to make me cut a promo on them, let's say. So end of the night, I go back into his office, and he's like, "Are you ready?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Come on." He goes, "Hang on, I got one more person I want to come in here." Cena comes in there. He's like, "Cut a promo on John." And I was like, "Easy," because at this time I already cut a promo on everybody on our rosters in my head in that bathroom mirror before I had to go back to do this. So long story short, I cut this promo on Cena, and I did go the comedy route with it a little bit. I did. I started getting like stuck on a word, and instead of saying the word, I would replace it with a completely different word. And Cena popped, and then Vince seemed to like it, and he's like, "All right, you're on." He goes, "Next week you'll be back. You'll be on the road." And so I go into the hallway, and John and Cena's like, "Hey, look, I know you're probably not excited about this." He goes, "Look, it gets you back on the road, get you back on television. You'll be able to change this into something that I know you'll be more comfortable doing," which was cool of John to say, and he was right, in a way, because look at John's character, look at, Kane's characters before when they first came in, right?
Right. Yeah, all you need is you need a foot in the door, and you need the right audience, and you need a chance to make some type of progression to what you're going to get to. Very few guys come in and stay with the same gimmick that they started with. You look at Stone Cold, he was a ringmaster. Look at Billy Gunn, he was rockabilly. You look at Kane, he was the dentist. Look at Road Dogg, he was the roadie. Look at Triple H, he was the aristocrat. There's so many people that came in that became big stars, but they rarely ever come in with the same gimmick and stay with that their entire run.
Yep. No, you're 100% right. But later on, what ends up happening, I ended up being partnered with, they put me with Carlito to be kind of like his bodyguard type of his heater, actually. And he ends up getting drafted to Raw. And whenever they do the drafts, you know how that works. They're deciding who they're keeping and who they're not, and who they're going to release. I ended up getting released, and the deal was to get me off television for about a good year before bringing me back, so people could hopefully forget about that character and I'd be able to do something different again, right? And so I did. I went to New Japan. I wrestled there. Got to wrestle a Tokyo Dome show versus I can't remember the guy's name. It's horrible. Semi-main event too. That's horrible. I don't remember that. Uh-huh. But All Japan, New Japan, Hustle Pro Wrestling over there. I got to do about almost 2 years. I ended up doing in Japan because the money was really good, and I actually liked that style.
Did Johnny get you booked over there?
Originally, yes, with New Japan originally was, but from there, Brock ended up coming to New Japan like right after I did. So like their Monster Gaijin at this point, Brock obviously is going to be. And so I went to All Japan, where I got some really good experience there, working and tagging with D'Lo Brown, Bull Buchanan, Taka Michinoku as well. I was in their group together, and I learned a lot very quickly. But I was supposed to go back to WWE in about a year, but I really, really liked what I was doing, and I liked being able to control my own schedule the way I was able to. But more importantly, I felt like I was improving quickly. My thing was I needed to start working like I looked, right? John can tell you that probably too. So Japan brought that out of me a hell of a lot more. I was a lot more aggressive after being there for 2 straight years. I mean, every single week. Because back then you could work with multiple companies. You didn't have to just be with New Japan, and God forbid you went to All Japan, it'd be sacrilege. It wasn't like that. This now had changed where I could do Hustle and All Japan shows together. Long story short, every weekend, just about, I was in Japan. So it's a lot of work I was getting, got a lot of improvement I got. And Cornette was with TNA at this point, and had been trying to get me in there, and so I can be the Blueprint character that I was in OVW, but they're at TNA, and that's how I ended up getting into TNA.
Oh, that's such a, I always thought it was such a great learning progression to go to Japan. Guys that went to Japan, especially back, in the day, before me with Mr. Briscoe's era and my era, just had a different level in the ring of what they could do because of being wrestling in Japan so much. It's hard to explain to people that haven't wrestled in a bunch of different territories. It's hard to get over. But if you can get over anywhere, you can get over somewhere else. But if you
I hate to say it's harder work over there, but it is harder work because because of the culture there. The fans are so laid back. you got to dig and dig and dig until you find that magic point that sparks the crowd there, and that's what makes you a better worker. And I'm sure you found that out, Matt. You know that you had to work harder over there and longer.
And here's the good news again. Well, first it wasn't good news, but after a while it was the language barrier. Yeah. So you have to also, I hate to say it this way, but I had to learn how to politic better, which was something I was terrible at when I was with WW the first time. I was just a wide-eyed rookie. You said something to me, you'd just be like, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. Whereas you do have to say what you want. You have to be able to politic a little bit. You have to.
Yeah.
You
got to. Yeah.
So here I'm in Japan with a referee who I'm supposed to trust to come tell me what my opponent wants that night and what we're going to be doing. And believe you me, I got tested immediately. I had a young boy who ended up being signed by WWE years later, but he was a young boy at this time, still in his black trunks, black boots, hardly even had an entrance, right? But there's supposed to be a squash match for me. Well, beginning of the match, he smacks me in my face. This is not what I was told was going to happen. I hauled off. I killed him. He just rolls under the ring. He goes underneath the ring. And apparently, I'm not bragging about this, by the way, but I slapped him back from smacking me, obviously. And I hit his eardrum. I shattered his eardrum. But the moral of the story is, when I went back to the locker room, I now had respect back there.
Right.
And I'm like, no disrespect. What a stupid way to do that. I just hurt a kid that didn't need to get hurt. But I see why they do it, though, because in Japan, even though it's after your guys's, times of being there, it still was the same in that regard, in which they will test you. Absolutely. Especially the bigger you are. They want to look good and kick out all your stuff.
That's right. It's just amazing. I used to tell people, I'm sure you did too, Mr. Briscoe, but when guys would go over there, at some point you're going to be tested. And at some point you're going to have to back them up. And it happened to every single person who's ever been over there.
Yeah, fortunately, it happened to me my very first match there, because I come out of college. I mean, I was fresh out of college when I first went to Japan in 1969. And the first match I had over, I was probably 195 pounds, maybe pushing 200, just real close to 200. But I had Oki Shikina, one of the big Korean guys, who had a chop that when he chopped, he'd chop you in the next week, man. So right off the bat, me and him were booked against each other. The first night, I'm still young. All the guys are warning me too, and be careful. The guy's going to go. Hey, it's just what he does. He eats you up. So I'm out there. So I'm trying to get along. I'm trying to trade politics too, because you also hear you can wrestle, but you don't want to out wrestle them, because they'll get bad at you. Then you'll get beat every night. So you really had to play that fine line. That Oki, he shot me and he hit me right in the throat, and I went down. And man, I did, how that lightning just flashed. Man, I double-legged his ass and I had him down. I had him all over the map for about 5 minutes. Finally, I just blew up and I just let him go. But you're right, Matt, when you get back to that dressing room, everybody's patting you on the back. Way to go. Way to shake up for yourself. And you have a different line of respect right away from them.
Yeah, you're 100% right. Yes, sir.
Barbarian told me recently, I think you were there, Jerry, when it was in St. Louis, we were together with Barbarian. And he told me this same thing. He was so polite, and he is one of the big tough guys in the history of our business.
Yeah.
He'd gone through the sumo school. He's picked by the king of Tonga to go to Japan with Haku to go to the sumo school. I mean, he's legendary tough, but he was too nice. And so finally Brody and some guys pulled him aside and said, if you don't take care of business tonight in the ring, we're going to take care of you back here. And he said, so I go out there and I beat up the guy.
Yeah. And to hear him say it's kind of sheepishly the way he said, and I beat up the guy.
Yeah, right. I'm so glad I just didn't randomly end up being the guy for with him that night.
Yeah, lucky. Yeah.
It's such a different style. I just love Japan. I just love the style. I love the culture. I love the respect they have for it. It's an amazing thing. I know Jerry will tell you. I saw the trends. The transgression with the difference of the crowds from, say, the 80s and 90s into the 2000s. Where for a long time, if your match was good, they wouldn't do anything. They would sit there respectfully and just watch you. And
Yep.
it's really weird to feel that because you're wanting that murmur, you're wanting that crowd, and all of a sudden you don't get it, and you're like, "Am I doing something wrong?" And no, you're doing
brother, in the late '60s and early '70s, they were so quiet in there at times. You know, what are we doing right? Are we doing anything at all to make these people like it? But you could look out. You know, I look at tapes now. I look out and I see the intent look on all the fans' face out there. They're enjoying the hell out of what you do because in the late '60s, early '70s, you had to do a lot of wrestling. So that's what those people were used to, and so when you gave them that, that's what they understand. When you busted into all the showbiz stuff, they really didn't know how to react at that time until they were conditioned and programmed to it later on, and that's how they started doing it, how coming around to being a USA audience.
My first time over there, I was with a tag team with Bob Orton Jr. And so the first night we're tagging, I was way over my head. Bob tags me in, and the first thing he says to me, he goes, first advice he gave me, he goes, "I'm over, kid. I can sell. You're not. Don't give them shit." So Bob would get out there and they would work with Bob. They'd have this great match, this nice working match. I get in there and it's just nothing but stiff. I'm like, this is not even the same match. Yeah. It's just,
So Matt, when you go to TNA, you got Cornette there, and you guys had a lot of really good talent because there were a lot of guys switching at that time. That had to feel at home and had to feel real comfortable to you to be around that type of guy and let your character. And now you're with somebody that you feel a little bit more at ease under that. You're not under that WWE microscope where you could be a Matt Morgan, you could be the Blueprint, and kind of cut loose with. Is that how you felt when you got there?
Yeah, my very first conversation was with Jeff Jarrett there, and he's like, "Hey," he goes, "I know you can talk." He goes, "We have an idea. We're gonna do a slow burn with you to reintroduce you as a wrestler, but first, want to keep me with Jim Cornette. I was Jim Cornette's on-air bodyguard for like the first, I don't know, 6 months of TV." And the idea was not to, and he was 100% correct on this. I was still in that stage. Even though I just finished in Japan and I was getting better, I was still relying on my size and my look and things of that nature, and not the bigger, the little nuances that you have to be able to have to click with an audience, right? So, long story short, they'd give me the microphone every week. I'd be able to talk just about every episode that I was on. And even though I was Cornette's bodyguard, they'd have me be the GM of the show sometimes when they'd pretend Jimmy was sick or something like that. And it was really good character development for me to the point where the fans wanted to eventually then see me wrestle and take out these bad guys, these villains at the time. And so instead of just having me come in right away as, former W superstar Matt Morgan's here, blah, 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 blah. Instead of that, it made me come across as more of a TNA grown character, because they could see the metamorphosis of me starting as a guy in a suit every single week with sunglasses on, basically a poor man's Ray Traylor, if you will, to then becoming, the Blueprint, the DNA of TNA, all these other monikers that I ended up becoming there and working with the main event pay-per-view matches with Kurt Angle and AJ Styles and Samoa Joe and those guys. Yeah.
Yeah, some incredible talent, just those guys, and the work rate was just unbelievable, and Jeff Jarrett, there's not a bigger Jeff Jarrett fan in the world than me. I think he's awesome. And to this day, he's aged gracefully. I've just aged old. He looks fantastic right now.
He looks the same. He literally looks
the same. He looks like almost better now than he looked 30 years ago. It's just amazing. He's got an incredible look.
I thought musculature wise, yes, he does look better now. Actually, I agree.
Yeah, which makes me mad. Him and Billy Gunn are the same way. They're like they're like Jonathan Winters on Mork and Mindy, where you're aging backwards. Yeah. I see Billy, and I'm going, when Billy took a picture with me, Ron, and Road Dogg, and some other guys, we look like his coaches, like his coaches. Like, who's the old guy with Billy Gunn? No, he's actually older than all of us. He just looks better.
And what was so crazy about Billy was like how he was like the fat. I mean, I know everyone thinks, Dolph Ziggler, a good friend of mine. I love him to death. He was in OVW with us. And a lot of people say he's the fast. A lot of people like to say him or Bobby Roode are the, best bumping feeders and the quickest bumping feeders in today's. But Not faster than Billy Gunn. No flipping way.
No.
Nope.
I saw Billy do a comeback one time in a 6-man tag, and to this day, it was some house show. I can't remember what it was. It's the best comeback I've ever seen. Billy was so good out there and so fast and just fluid. You know, there was nothing herky jerky about him. It's just a terrific athlete.
Yeah. At 6'5", 6'6", 280 pounds all the time.
Yeah.
It was funny because we were in Japan one time when Heidenreich was there and he was trying to learn the business, and Billy got him out there and had a great match with him. I said, "Boy, you screwed up, Billy." And he goes, you know what I'm talking about, Jerry? And I said, "What do you mean?" I said, "They just found out you can have a great match with anybody. You're going to be stuck with all these guys." Sure enough. And the guy comes in, they stick Billy with it.
So Matt, your TNA day, was that when you decided to make the move down to Orlando? Move your family down?
Yeah, sir. Because up until then, I was still, even though I was in Japan so much, I was living in Louisville. So the flights, the connecting flights nonstop, I'd lose a day of travel just on the connecting flights. So it made sense as well also to have an airport that also had direct flights out of it.
Right.
Yeah, that makes such a difference for travelers. It's just, when I lived in Dallas or near Dallas, that was great because it was middle of the country. You know, even because, you know, most of the guys live on the East Coast because most of your shows are on the East Coast. But then when you have to go to California and you're back the next week, it's just your whole week is ruined in between because you're flying back and forth so far.
Yep, you're right.
So was the talk ever, did you ever think about coming back to WWE? Did you ever?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yes, I had a couple of times in between my contracts being up at TNA. But I got to be honest, I felt, loyal to them. Dixie Carter at the time took really good care of me financially. A lot of people might not believe this, but it's the truth. My second contract with TNA, I made more than I did with WWE at the time. They did pay us well at this time. But there's other things that Dixie Carter did that I was always really appreciative of. She knew me and my wife. I shared with her about me and my wife struggling. We want to have kids, but we were both told, me separately by myself, my wife by herself was told that, we couldn't have children. So we really wanted that bad. Dixie had a similar situation she shared with us. So long story short, she flew in this doctor from where she's from in Nashville to our shows to work with me and my wife, get us on these medications to try to see if we could get pregnant that way. And just a lot of things with heart that really, really made me think the world of her. And cool. I want to return that loyalty, right? She always took care of me. She helped me get onto American Gladiators on NBC at the time, which was a big deal for me in 2008. She was a great, great boss, I thought. And so I wanted to be loyal. But there's only a certain amount of stuff you can do within a 7 to 8 year window in that company as far as all the characters you could face off against. And I faced off against every one of them at this point. And it was time for me to go back. So long story short, it's January 2014 January. I'm supposed to be coming back to WWE. I was going to re-debut in the Royal Rumble as a surprise entrant, right? And I was going to be able to be the blueprint, everything that I was doing at TNA, essentially, same thing. And this was at a time in which, if you remember, they weren't keen on bringing people from TNA into WWE. They weren't. Like, this is still, like, they wouldn't have brought an AJ in at this time, if you remember, even though they should have. Long story short, this is what the plan was. But my son, Jackson, ends up being born January 7th, 2014. And in the delivery room, I just told you how hard it took us 12 years to have this child. And here he is in my hands for the first time in the delivery room. Just something I was not expecting in a million years to happen. Just a switch went off in my head that, holy ish, I can never be away from this kid ever again. It's time for me to be a dad. And that ended up being, so long story short, I called Mr. McMahon. I told him what was going on. He was obviously he was disappointed, but he was also very excited for us that we finally were parents, right? He understood. He said, if the feeling ever changed, please, obviously call them again. But it ended up being the right decision, John, because my son just 2 years later ends up being diagnosed as being nonverbal autistic. So it really was the right decision for me to retire from wrestling at that point.
Yeah.
So I could be home with him.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. I mean, it's
Yeah.
really, it's so important. You know, one of the reasons that I didn't have kids was because I was on the road 300 days a year. And I
Yeah.
thought the kid's not going to have a dad. You know, it's tough. You know, like Mr. Briscoe has two fine young boys, but you know, that's the exception. You know, a lot of these
Yeah.
guys that are on the road all the time, just they have real issues with their families because they're not home, and it's tough to be on the road and be away from your family.
I couldn't imagine it. Now, to be fair, if this was my rookie year, my second year, my third year, my fourth year in the business, I'd have to go make that money. It'd have to be what it would be because that was my source of income, right?
Sure.
That's how I was taking care of my family. So I'm not knocking guys and gals that are doing that with families now because that's how they make their ends meet for their families. But at this time, I was smart with my money. This was like my 14th year, I believe, of wrestling at the time and earning a good living doing it. So I was comfortable enough to be able to make that decision.
Yeah.
Now, tell us a little bit about the American Gladiator, how you got on there and what happened.
That was crazy. So if you guys remember back in 2008, a writer's strike happened, right? Where they stopped having all these different written shows on television, right? Comedies, things like that. And so they went back to reality shows, or they created new reality shows, or they, like I said, brought back old ones. One of them they rebooted was American Gladiators back from the 80s, right? And so they had Hulk Hogan and Layla Ali, Muhammad Ali's daughter, be the hosts of the show. And it was doing really good ratings on NBC the first season. And I got contacted from somebody that said that Hulk Hogan wanted to cast a character called the Beast, and he thought that they should look in the direction of pro wrestlers to portray this Beast character on American Gladiators. So long story short, I had to audition for this character. And so honestly, what I did is I went into that room. I flew out to California, and I did anything any wrestler I thought would have done for sure. But apparently I was the only one who did it. I walked in that room, I ripped my shirt off, and I completely meathead Matt mode and really tried to scare the bejesus out of every single person in that room with the camera, the person with the microphone that was trying to put it on a shirt that's no longer there because I ripped it off my body. And just acted like a complete nut job meathead because I watched some of the first season of Gladiators, and their whole gimmick is over the top, almost 1980s ish. I would argue pro wrestler characters, really over the top. So I went over the top with this to the point where they couldn't tell if I was serious or if I wasn't. And so when I left, my agent was like, "What did you do?" And I'm like, "I went in there and I did exactly what I told you I was going to do. I was going to, go in there and go bananas on everybody and be what I thought the Beast character would be." And he's like, "I don't know what you did, but like you scared half of them. Let's hope that everything works out though." And before I even got to the end of the building, the doorway that I was heading toward in the hallway, they called me back in and they said, "That was awesome. Could you do that on command whenever you want?" I was like, "Yeah, of course." I wanted to tell them every wrestler could, quite honestly.
Right. You want to tell them
But,
I just did it on command. Yeah.
Right. So long story short, I ended up getting casted for that. And I do owe a little bit of that to Hulk because he was actually a part of that process to dwindle down the nitty gritty as to who the final three people would be for that role. But they didn't even do that. They just gave it to me right after that one, interview.
And when did your fascination or interest in politics start? Was it after the 2015? Was it after? I'm just so interested because you and Glenn, we were almost Glenn's brother at one time, which would have technically made you Undertaker's brother too. I don't know if you survived the fire or not, but or if you started it.
Yeah, he started
it. Honestly, I think I know when I became a dad, yeah. I everything how I viewed everything changed. I was a little scared, but also it was also the first time that I now wasn't thinking about putting myself first. Even though I was married, I love my wife to death. She's my best friend, my partner in crime, and everything like that, right? But I still, as a wrestler, always put my business first. Me working on my body or my character or being on the road wrestling, whatever have you, right? There's a lot of, I don't want to say selfishness, but myopic viewpoint you're doing being a pro wrestler, right? You're putting your stuff first, your business first. Well, this is the first time I didn't have that feeling with my son now. And I started to pay attention to who's making the decisions around here and the environment my little boy's going to grow up in. And then, from there, it just started to snowball with more questions I started asking, the more I was getting more answers. And I learned that I live in a 150-year-old city here in the city of Longwood, Florida. It's a very small city. We're only 16,000 residents. And what I learned is we had a city commission with 5 equal city commissioners that all share equal responsibilities on policies and things of that nature to supposedly help improve the city, right? Well, I learned we had guys that have been in office for 20 years, 15 years. And again, my son now is nonverbal autistic at this point as well. The diagnosis was just fresh when I decided to run for my first term in 2017. So a lot of it snowballed into me asking more questions, who's making decisions around here. Residents started to see me doing that, and then they all started coming to me and saying, you really should try to run for office. And then I learned from them essentially in the beginning, because people don't know what a city commissioner does or their own personal mayor does unless they need something more times than not, right? Unless something happens to the property or whatever have you in the city, then they really don't necessarily know. And I would argue most residents can't name all 5 or 4 or however many commissioners they have in their cities, or councilmen for that matter, most, unless you need them. So I was no different. And then I got educated, and I was asked to run originally earlier, but I wanted to do my research on it first and see is there a fit here? Is there a need? What's the main need in this city? And I wanted to ask residents that. So I went around and I door knocked, John, no joke, on every single resident's door. Granted, there's only 16,000, but I walked my city 3 separate times, knocking on everybody's doors and seeing the different things they wanted to see changed about our city. And a lot of the things lined up about, like, mine's not just one. I'm not just one prong type of elected official where I'm just super focused on special needs only. It's everything. It's everything, and it's not right or left. What I like about city elected officials business is that you get to represent everybody, and you're not really marred down in the divisive, politics of today's day and age. I get to represent. Pothole doesn't care if you're Republican or Democrat, right? The street light could care less, if you're Republican or Democrat. And so for those reasons, I really, really thought I really would be able to help the city out a great deal. And honestly, the deal what I did, John, is I really just put the ball in their court. I'm like, look, the seat I sit in up on that commission dais, that ain't mine. That's yours. I get to rent it every 3 or 4 years. If you guys decide that you want me to stay here, that's how this works. So with that point, when I'm up there making decisions, you all need to be part of this process. You can't just say you want to elect me and then you ghost me and I don't see you at any commission meetings, right? You guys need to be participatory so we can then make decisions on things you all want to see done here. So long story short, our city was the first in the Southeast region of the United States to adopt Facebook Live and have it also be ADA compliant, to have all of our commission meetings streamlined that way. So people that couldn't make it to a commission meeting because it's at 6:00 on a Monday night, they could sit from comfort of their home and watch it. Most importantly, they can now give me feedback. Matt, that was a horrible decision. Why in the hell would you do that? Okay, give it to me. So then we can fix it, or other ideas that they had. So that's what made it all start. So I wasn't somebody one day back when I was younger and said, you know what I want to be one day? I want to be a politician. Hell no. I hated politicians and I hated politics.
Well, that's why you're a good one. It is. And also,
It is.
Also the local people, the local politicians are the ones that make decisions. Your national politicians, they're mired down in committees, they're mired down in politics. They really don't affect the local people. The people in America need to understand, and a lot of people do, to their credit, is that your local leaders are the ones that actually directly affect your life.
Amen. I tell everybody, if you really, really want to do something about something you don't like, you got to start with your own backyard. You have to.
So is there any progression here that you're going to step up to a statewide level, a national level, or a spoiler here that you're going to be Kane's running mate, or he's going to be your running mate?
No, man. Like I said, I never got into this to make a career out of this. And I mean by that, and I stick by that. Here's the rub, John. I don't know. Would I get that same, say if I did state rep, let's say I did Senate or something like that, let's say a bigger level government position. I don't think I'd get that high that I get literally down at Publix, a block from my house, or at the gas station on the other end of the block. when I'm sitting there pumping my gas, somebody comes over to me and gives me that, that pat on the back about helping build Ryder Park in our city, which is a multi-million-dollar park that now brings people to our city for the first time in ever. And things like that. Like, I don't think I would get that. I don't think I'd get that feedback because we don't make much money doing this. So you don't do it for the paycheck. You do it. At least I know I do it for that rush, that rush of, I mean, when somebody says, hell yeah, great job. We appreciate what you're doing. I love
Do you have any negative stuff? Like when Glenn ran, they showed him like tombstoning Linda McMahon. Yeah. They showed him all kinds of crazy stuff, which it kills me because I guess if Anthony Hopkins was running, they would show him eating somebody as Hannibal Lecter. It's crazy to me. You want to tell these guys, if you're that dumb that you think Fred Flintstone is real, you shouldn't be running against Glenn for politics.
100% right. Yes. So yes, they did. They tried to. It would fail because at the end of the day, especially it had to have failed big time for Glenn's haters doing that, because Kane's an iconic wrestling character that everybody just about knows.
That's right.
Like, what a stupid way to do it. So like, if they did try to do that, it would blow up in their faces and people wouldn't put it down. They'd be like, wow, that's pretty cool. This guy was a wrestler and wants to, instead of retiring right off to the sunset, he wants to represent his city. That's pretty badass. I'll vote for this guy.
You may actually be Abel, his brother, because you've been a mayor. He's been a mayor. I mean, you guys have a pretty good career. If Undertaker ever becomes mayor of Austin,
we're in trouble.
We will know for sure that you three boys did real well.
Right?
That's right.
John's got about 10,000 acres out in West Texas. There, he's called Parts Unknown. He's looking for a guy to run for commissioner.
That's
there.
right. That's right.
And mayor and city council. So he's got Undertaker, Kane, and you all lined up, I guess.
That's right.
Go, man.
It'll be bigger than your team that you had with Nathan Jones and Brock.
Yeah. And you know something, guys? I did speak to Glenn as he was running for his first term in 2018. I had just been elected a year earlier in an off year here in Longwood in a special election. And I thought it was awesome that he was running. I was like, oh my God, this is easy. This makes total sense. Going to destroy this. And he's done amazing.
Oh, I just think the world of Glenn. He's an incredibly smart guy. He's the type of guy, just like you are, that you need in politics, because he doesn't have to be there. He's there.
He cares. Yeah.
He's there because he wants to be there. And just like you, he's a very smart guy. That's what we need in our politics across the nation.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, guys.
Well, Matt, good luck to you, man. We appreciate you taking time out of your schedule, being on with us here. We just BS with us for this little hour and a half or whatever. Man, we wish you the best of luck, man. And anytime that we're over there, maybe we can come and get a favor from the city council.
Hey, let me tell you something real quick. Right when Glenn was running, I told him, I said, hey, if you really want to get elected, I will come down and endorse your opponent. He said, oh, that's great. I said, and then Michael Cole was sitting by me when I was texting him. I said, Michael Cole, because at the time we were the most hated guys ever on television. I said, Michael Cole said he'd come down and endorse him too. He goes, both of us will come down and endorse your opponent. Tell him that he's our friend. We love him. He should be elected. We don't like you. You'll get elected in a landslide. So if you ever need that, me and Mr. Brisco will come endorse your opponent.
Well, thank you, guys. Seriously, thank you.
Man, thank you. Hey, thank you so much. I've been looking forward to this. I love what you're doing down there. I enjoyed you in WWE. And so thank you. Thank you so much for coming on our show.
Thank you, guys. Love you both to death. Thank you very, very much.